The Sandman by E.T.A. Hoffman. So, the story starts with a series of letters, and that structure actually matters, because it immediately messes with what's real and what isn't. So, first we hear from Nathaniel, the main character. He's writing to his friend Lothar, but the letter accidentally goes to Clara, who's Lothar's sister, and also Nathaniel's fiancée. In this letter, Nathaniel is clearly disturbed. He says a man named Coppelius has re-entered his life, and this has completely shaken him. To understand why, Nathaniel goes back to his childhood. When Nathaniel was a kid, his mother used to threaten him with a folkloric figure called the Sandman. She'd tell him that if he didn't go to bed, the Sandman would come and throw sand in his eyes, making them bleed out of their sockets. Nathaniel eventually connects this imaginary figure with Coppelius, a grotesque, violent man who used to visit his father late at night. Coppelius wasn't a friendly guest. Every time he showed up, Nathaniel was sent to bed, and the house filled with fear. One night, Nathaniel secretly spies on Coppelius and his father. He discovers they're performing some kind of alchemical or scientific experiments. Coppelius catches Nathaniel spying. He threatens to throw hot coals into the boy's eyes and twist his limbs apart like a broken doll. Not long after this, Nathaniel's father dies in an explosion during one of these nighttime experiments. Coppelius disappears immediately afterward, and Nathaniel grows up believing Coppelius was responsible for his father's death. Back in the present, Nathaniel says Coppelius has returned under a new name, Coppola. Coppola is an Italian optics salesman selling barometers and eyeglasses. Nathaniel is convinced this is the same man. Just seeing him sends Nathaniel into panic. Now Clara replies to Nathaniel's letter, and her response is calm and rational. She tells him that Coppelius and Coppola are probably not the same person, and that Nathaniel is allowing childhood trauma and imagination to control him. She doesn't deny his fear, but she believes it came from his own mind. This deeply upsets Nathaniel. The narration then shifts away from the letters and becomes more objective. Nathaniel returns to university, where he lives across from a physics professor named Spallanzani. One day, Coppola visits Nathaniel and sells him a small telescope. Even though Nathaniel hates the man, he buys it anyway. Using the telescope, Nathaniel starts watching Spallanzani's daughter, who sits motionless at a window for long periods of time. Nathaniel becomes obsessed with her. At a party held by Spallanzani, Olympia finally appears among guests. She barely talks, responds mechanically. Everyone else finds her strange and unsettling. Nathaniel, on the other hand, becomes completely infatuated. He stops caring about Clara, whom he once loved deeply. Eventually, Nathaniel witnesses a violent argument between Spallanzani and Coppola. During the fight, Olympia is torn apart. Her body falls to the floor and her eyes roll out, revealing that she was never human at all. She is an automaton, a mechanical doll created by Spallanzani, with Coppola supplying the eyes. Nathaniel completely breaks. He collapses into madness and is taken to an asylum. After a long recovery, Nathaniel seems to get better. He reunites with Clara, and for a while, things appear normal again. Clara believes Nathaniel has finally overcome his delusions. But then, while standing on top of a tower with Clara, Nathaniel looks through Coppola's telescope once more. He suddenly sees Clara not as a person, but as a lifeless doll, just like Olympia. He goes violently insane again, tries to throw Clara off the tower, and screams about eyes and the Sandman. Clara is saved by Lothar. Nathaniel looks down into the street, where Coppelius is standing below. Coppelius mocks him and tells him to hurry up. Nathaniel throws himself from the tower and dies on the spot, and Coppelius disappears into the crowd. The story ends by briefly mentioning that Clara later marries someone else and lives a stable, peaceful life. Basically, the kind of life Nathaniel could never tolerate. There's not really any confirmation that Coppelius is supernatural, or a clear answer about whether Nathaniel is cursed or simply traumatized. Carmilla. So, the story is told by a woman named Laura. She's writing this way later, like looking back on something that happened when she was young. She lives with her father in this really isolated castle in Styria, which is modern-day Austria. The place is really isolated, like there's no neighbors or town nearby. Now, before the main story even starts, Laura talks about this memory from when she was a kid. She wakes up one night and there's a woman in her room. The woman lies down next to her, kind of comforts her, and then Laura suddenly feels these sharp pains in her chest, like needles. She screams, and suddenly the woman's gone. Years pass. Laura's older now, and one day there's this carriage accident near the castle. Inside the carriage is a young woman named Carmilla and her mother. She's in a hurry, says she has urgent business somewhere else, and basically asks Laura's father if Carmilla can just stay with them for a few months. Which is weird, but he agrees. So Carmilla moves in, and almost immediately she and Laura get really close, like very close. Carmilla is very intense about it. She keeps telling Laura how much she loves her, how they're connected, and how they were meant to meet. Basically how their souls are tied together. All of that. At the same time though, Carmilla's behavior is just off. She never goes to church. She avoids religious stuff completely. She won't talk about where she's from. She won't explain who her family is. She sleeps late into the day, and she's only really active at night. And then Laura starts getting sick. She has these nightmares where something comes into her room at night and presses down on her chest. Sometimes it feels like an animal, sometimes it's more vague than that. She wakes up tired, anxious, weaker every single time. Doctors look at her and can't figure out what's wrong. At that point, it's not random anymore. After that, Laura's father runs into General Spielsdorf, an old acquaintance, and the general tells him about his niece, Bertha Reinfeldt. She went through the same thing. A mysterious young woman befriended her, and then Bertha got sick, and eventually she died. At Bertha's funeral, that young woman showed up, exactly the same as before. That's when the general realized she wasn't human. She was a vampire. By now, it's pretty obvious Carmilla fits this pattern perfectly. And then Laura finally remembers something she couldn't place before. Carmilla is the same woman who visited her bedroom when she was a child. The Willows. So, two friends are canoeing down the Danube River. They stop on this small island covered in willow trees. It looks like a normal river island at first, but almost immediately they start feeling like something's wrong here. And both men get this shared feeling that they're being watched, but not by anything human. They notice odd things, like shapes forming in the sand, patterns that feel intentional. It feels like the island itself is aware of them. The narrator starts to realize these beings exist on a scale that humans aren't meant to perceive. They don't hate humans, but they don't care about them. At one point, the friend basically says that if these beings fully noticed them, they wouldn't survive, because they feel like humans simply can't exist in the presence of something that powerful. Eventually, a flood forces them off the island and they escape. The narrator leaves knowing one thing. There are parts of the natural world that aren't meant for us, and sometimes we wander into them by accident. Just an idea that the universe is bigger and far less human than we want it to be. The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. So the story starts in Kansas, with a little girl named Dorothy Gale. She lives on a bleak prairie farm with her Aunt Em and Uncle Henry. Baum keeps stressing how colorless and harsh Kansas feels. Dorothy's only real joy is her small dog Toto. One day, a massive cyclone hits. Aunt Em and Uncle Henry run for the storm cellar, but Dorothy can't get Toto in time, so she stays inside the house. The cyclone lifts the entire house off the ground and carries it for miles. When she opens the door, everything is suddenly bright and colorful. She's in a strange land she's never seen before. The house has landed on and killed the Wicked Witch of the East, who ruled over a group called the Munchkins. Her feet are sticking out from under the house, and she's wearing powerful silver shoes. Then, the Good Witch of the North appears, and she explains that Dorothy is now in the land of Oz, and that killing the Wicked Witch has freed the Munchkins from slavery. Dorothy doesn't really understand what's going on and just wants to go home. The Good Witch tells her that the only one powerful enough to send her back to Kansas is the Wizard of Oz, who lives in the Emerald City. Before Dorothy leaves, the Good Witch takes the silver shoes off the dead witch's feet and gives them to Dorothy, because they're magical and might protect her. Dorothy is pointed toward the yellow brick road which leads to the Emerald City. With Toto in her arms, she starts walking. Not long into the journey, Dorothy comes across a scarecrow stuck on a pole in a cornfield. He can talk and complains that he doesn't have a brain. Dorothy helps him and lifts him off the pole he was stuck on. The scarecrow then joins her, hoping that the wizard can give him intelligence. Then they reach a forest where Dorothy meets the Tin Woodman. He's rusted and is frozen in place, so Dorothy oils him so he can move again. He explains that he was once a human woodcutter, but bit by bit, his body was replaced with tin. He believes that because he's made of metal, he no longer has a heart. He joins the group, hoping that the wizard can give him a heart. Later on, they encounter a cowardly lion who jumps out to scare them, but ends up admitting he's terrified of everything. He believes he lacks courage and hopes the wizard can fix that too. So now the group is complete. Dorothy wants to go home. The scarecrow wants a brain, the Tin Woodman wants a heart, and the lion wants courage. They continue down the yellow brick road together. Along the way, they face several dangers. There's a deep ditch they have to cross. There's a dangerous field of poppies whose scent puts anyone who breathes it to sleep. Dorothy and Toto fall asleep immediately. The lion also collapses because he's large and breathes in more of the scent. The scarecrow and Tin Woodman aren't affected, since one doesn't breathe and the other isn't alive in the same way. They carry Dorothy out of the field and drag the lion to safety, where he eventually wakes up. Eventually, they reach the Emerald City. Everyone there is required to wear green glasses, which makes everything appear emerald-colored, though this detail becomes important later. They're brought before the Wizard of Oz, but not all at once. Each character sees the wizard separately, and the wizard appears differently to each of them. To Dorothy, he looks like a gigantic floating head. To the Scarecrow, he appears as a beautiful woman, and to the Tin Woodman, he looks like a terrifying beast. And he appears as a ball of fire to the lion. Despite these forms, the wizard tells them all the same thing. He'll grant their wishes only if they first kill the Wicked Witch of the West, who still rules over part of Oz and is extremely dangerous. Reluctantly, the group agrees and travels west. The Wicked Witch of the West has only one eye, but it's incredibly powerful. She watches Dorothy and her friends approach and immediately starts attacking them using magic and servants. First, she sends a pack of wolves, which the Tin Woodman destroys with his axe. Then she sends crows, which the Scarecrow defeats. Then she sends a group of Winky soldiers whom the lion scares away. Finally, she uses her most powerful weapon, the Golden Cap, which allows her to summon the Wing Monkeys 3 times. The Wing Monkeys capture Dorothy and Toto, destroy the Scarecrow and Tin Woodman, and imprison the lion. Dorothy is taken to the witch's castle and forced to do chores. The witch wants the silver shoes, but she can't take them directly because of the magic protecting Dorothy. She tries to trick her into losing them. One day, the witch makes Dorothy trip, and one of the silver shoes falls off. The witch grabs it, breaking the magic's protection. In fear, Dorothy grabs a bucket of water and throws it on the witch. The water melts the witch completely, because water is fatal to her. With the witch dead, the Winkies are freed. They repair the Tin Woodman, stuff the Scarecrow, and treat the lion like a hero. The group returns to the Emerald City to claim their rewards. But when they confront the wizard again, they find out that the wizard is not magical at all. He's just a normal man from Omaha, Nebraska, who was carried to Oz years earlier in a hot air balloon. He's been using tricks and illusions to maintain control. Even so, he still helps them in symbolic ways. He gives the Scarecrow a mixture of bran and needles, telling him it's a brain. The Scarecrow becomes more confident and thoughtful afterward. He gives the Tin Woodman a silk heart filled with sawdust. The Tin Woodman becomes kinder and more emotional. And he gives the lion a green potion labeled Courage. After drinking it, the lion believes in himself and acts bravely. None of these things are actually magical, but they help each character realize they already had what they wanted. As for Dorothy, the wizard initially plans to take her home using his hot air balloon. But at the last moment, Toto jumps out, Dorothy chases him, and the balloon floats away without her. The wizard leaves Oz permanently, and the Scarecrow is made ruler of the Emerald City. Dorothy is devastated, until the Good Witch of the South, Glinda, appears. She explains that the silver shoes have had the power to take Dorothy home all along. Dorothy just didn't know how to use them. Glinda tells Dorothy to click her heels together 3 times and wish to return home. Dorothy says goodbye to her friends, clicks her heels, and wakes up back in Kansas, in her own bed, surrounded by Aunt Em and Uncle Henry. The house is exactly where it started. Alice's adventure in Wonderland. So the story starts with a young girl named Alice. Alice is sitting by a riverbank with her sister. Her sister is reading a book, which Alice finds boring. Alice is restless and half daydreaming. Suddenly, she notices a white rabbit run past her. The rabbit looks weird. He's wearing a waistcoat and talking to himself. He pulls out a pocket watch and mutters to himself, freaking out about being late. That's the moment that hooks Alice's attention. She follows him, and without really thinking about it, she runs after him and jumps down a rabbit hole. The fall is really long. Long enough for Alice to look around, grab jars off shelves, and think about whether she might fall straight through the earth. Eventually, she lands softly at the bottom and finds herself in a hallway with many locked doors. On a glass table, she finds a small golden key, which opens a tiny door leading to a beautiful garden. But Alice is too big to fit through it. This kicks off the constant size-changing part of the story. Alice finds a bottle with a label, "Drink Me," written on it. After checking that it's not marked poison, she drinks it and shrinks down very small enough to fit through the door. But now she can't reach the key, which she left on the table. Then she eats a cake labeled "Eat Me" and grows enormous. She grows so large that she fills the room and starts crying uncontrollably. Her tears flood the hallway. Eventually, she shrinks again, ends up swimming in a pool of her own tears, along with several animals, including a mouse. They all wash up on shore. To dry everyone off, the mouse suggests a caucus race, which is basically everyone running in circles with no rules and no clear ending. Everyone wins, everyone gets prizes, and Alice hands out candy she conveniently still has in her pocket. Things get awkward when Alice talks about her cat, and the animals freak out because cats are predators. The animals wander off one by one, leaving Alice alone. Alice continues on and runs into the White Rabbit again, who mistakes her for his servant and sends her into his house to fetch gloves and a fan. Inside the house, Alice drinks another bottle and grows huge again, filling the rabbit's house entirely. The rabbit and others try to get her out by throwing pebbles through the window, which turn into little cakes. Alice eats them and shrinks back down, escaping into the woods. In the woods, Alice meets a caterpillar sitting on a mushroom, smoking a hookah. The caterpillar asks her very bluntly, "Who are you?" Alice can't really answer because she keeps changing size and feels confused about her identity. The caterpillar explains that different sides of the mushroom will make her grow or shrink. Alice takes a piece of it and uses it later to control her size more carefully. Next, she comes across a house belonging to the Duchess. Inside, it's complete chaos. The Duchess is aggressive, the cook is throwing pepper everywhere, and there's a baby crying non-stop. Alice notices the baby looks strange and eventually realizes it's turning into a pig. She takes the baby outside, and once it fully becomes a pig, it runs off into the woods. Outside, Alice meets the Cheshire Cat, who can appear and disappear at will, sometimes leaving only his grin behind. The cat gives Alice directions and warns her that everyone in Wonderland is mad. He points her toward the March Hare and the Hatter. Alice arrives at the famous Mad Tea Party, where the Mad Hatter, March Hare, and Dormouse are sitting at a long table, constantly moving places because there's no room, despite the table being huge. Time is basically broken here. The Hatter explains that he offended time, so it's always 6 o'clock, tea time, forever. The conversation makes very little logical sense. Riddles don't have answers, and everyone is rude to Alice. Eventually, Alice gets fed up and she leaves the place. She then wanders into a tree and finds another door, which leads her back to the beautiful garden she saw earlier. This time, she uses the mushroom correctly and gets to the right size. In the garden, she encounters the Queen of Hearts, who is playing croquet. This is not normal croquet. The balls are hedgehogs, the mallets are flamingos, and the hoops are living soldiers who keep moving. The Queen is extremely violent and constantly shouts "off with their heads" at basically everyone, though the executions rarely seem to actually happen. Alice meets the King of Hearts, who is less aggressive but just as ridiculous. The Cheshire Cat appears again, which annoys the Queen because she can't figure out how to behead something that's only a head. Eventually, the cat disappears before they can decide. Later, Alice is invited to a trial. The Knave of Hearts is accused of stealing the Queen's tarts. The court is completely absurd. The jurors write nonsense. The evidence makes no sense. The king makes up rules on the spot. As the trial goes on, Alice begins growing larger again. She starts speaking more confidently and openly challenges the nonsense of the court. Finally, the Queen demands Alice's execution. Alice snaps back that they're nothing but a pack of cards. At that moment, the cards rise up and fly at her, and Alice suddenly wakes up on the riverbank. She's back with her sister. Alice tells her sister about the strange dream, and the story ends with her sister quietly imagining Alice growing up while still keeping her sense of curiosity and imagination. An occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. It basically starts with a man named Peyton Farquhar standing on a bridge during the American Civil War. He's about to be hanged by Union soldiers. There's not really any build-up. You just get dropped straight into it. As he's about to die, time slows down. He remembers his wife, his home, and his life before the war. Then, suddenly, the rope snaps, and he falls into the river below and survives. From here, the story turns almost dreamlike. Peyton escapes, swims for miles, he dodges all the gunfires, and staggers through forests. And eventually, he makes it home. He sees his wife standing on the porch, waiting for him. He runs towards her. And the moment he reaches out, the story snaps back to reality. The rope never broke. This time, his neck snaps. Everything we just witnessed, like the escape, the journey, the reunion, all of it happened in the final seconds of his life. Okay, so that's it for the video. If there's a story here you hadn't heard of before, let me know in the comments.